Hi, it's Nikki here from Happy Hormones for Life, and today I am talking to the lovely Sara Davison, known as the divorce coach, a multi-award-winning coach, best-selling author, and podcast host of Heartbreak to Happiness, which I've been on, which is a great podcast to check out. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you. Very excited to be here, Nikki.
Oh, good. I'm excited to have you too. This is a really juicy topic for a lot of midlife women, so I'm excited to get stuck in. So tell us first of all how you ended up being the divorce coach.
Well, yeah, it's not exactly the catchiest job title in the world, is it?
I
And I
love it.
certainly didn't dream of becoming the divorce coach when I was at school trying to work out what career I was going into. So, yeah, I mean, I got into this because I was catapulted out of my own marriage about 16 years ago now, when I found out literally overnight that my husband not only wasn't in love with me anymore and didn't want to be with me anymore, but he was madly in love with somebody else. And that somebody else was 12 years younger than me, which really never helps. Stunningly beautiful, again, really doesn't help. And I found out within a couple of months that she was pregnant. Now, we'd been married for about 3 or 4 years. We had a global business together with nearly 200 staff. Our son was one. And so our lives were very intertwined. So it was very, very difficult to see what my future would hold without that. And it hit me like a freight train because I absolutely had no clue that was coming. I knew there were some challenges, but I always thought marriage was forever. We'd work through it, and I wouldn't be one of those people just to get divorced. But had very little choice in the matter. He moved on very quickly as he was madly in love, and I was left doing, well, quite a lot of the ugly crying on the bathroom floor, phoning my mum at 2 a.m., looking for help, trying therapy, trying anything to take the pain away, but couldn't find anything. And I'd actually gone out to our Sydney office in Australia to work out there for a while. And what I hadn't anticipated was that everybody that knew my husband was having an affair before I did, which was pretty much 90% of the company, were coming up to me and telling me how they found out about it, because they were so relieved that I now knew, and they felt sorry for me, and they were like, oh my goodness, we found out 3 months ago, we found out 2 months ago. And to be honest, Nikki, it was like a dagger through the heart every time. Even though they weren't trying to be mean, they were trying actually to be supportive. It was too much. So I'd taken myself out of the office and I'd gone down to one of my favourite spots out in Australia, which is Balmoral Beach. And for those people that don't know it, it's white sand, turquoise sea. And yet there I was, perched on this little seawall, crying my eyes out, sobbing away in absolute agony, because heartbreak can actually feel like a physical pain. And actually, I will never forget that moment, that trip down to that beach that day, because it was actually really pivotal for me. Because I sat there looking out at this beautiful scenery with cockatoos flying down like they do, like pigeons in Trafalgar Square, thinking, what am I doing? I'm in the most beautiful place. I've got a beautiful young boy. And yet my whole life I'm thinking is in tatters, is in ruins. Enough of the pain, enough of this bullying, intimidating kind of environment that I'm in. I'm taking my power back. Screw you, watch this. And I decided just to step up and turn my life around. And actually, that was the defining moment for me, because I tried to find tools to help me and really not found anything, because there really wasn't back then, apart from therapy, which obviously is great and plays its role for some people. But for me, I'd been a coach for 15 years at this point, and I wanted something that's a lot more directive, a lot more try this, do this. If you feel betrayed, do this, this works. By the way, this is what the divorce process is going to look like. Here's some of the pitfalls. These are some practical tips you can do. And yet there was nobody giving me that. So I decided I was going to go away, create my own toolkit. And that was really the basis of my first book, Uncoupling, which literally overnight was a bestseller on Amazon. And from there, I realized that there was a huge demand for what we did. So that's why I set up the training school. And we've now trained over 700 breakup and divorce coaches across 30 different countries now. So yeah, there's a lot of people out there with the tools helping people. And my mission to help people around the world to cope better with any kind of breakup is in full flow, which is fantastic. So we're helping a lot of people every day.
That's amazing. And obviously there's a lot of demand, it's not going anywhere, is it? Breakups, it's just what happens in life. And I like the way you likened heartbreak to a physical pain, because that's how it feels, doesn't it? And I talk a lot about emotional health and wellness in my book as a key to aging well. Um, because emotional stress turns into physical stress, and it is literally, you can die of a broken heart, and they've already proved that. So it turns into a physical wellness issue, which is why I was interested in talking to you, because the more tools we have to help us with that emotional resilience and strength, wherever it's coming from, and obviously there's lots of different stresses, it's particularly at midlife. And what I'm hearing and sensing and reading about is that, divorce and relationship issues are actually a very common theme in midlife, particularly obviously I work with a lot of women, but for women in midlife, this is when the divorce and the relationship issues can come to a head. Do you find this is the case in your work?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, everyone goes through heartbreak at least once in a lifetime, most of us more than once. And I think, it's something that impacts everybody. But I think midlife is a time of real change. And whenever there's change, it does test the foundation of a relationship. Midlife tends to be, obviously, you've got the menopause when, if people don't understand that, then again, and also the male menopause, obviously. So there's a lot of shifts around that, which can redefine what you're looking for or what you'll tolerate, or what your partner wants to tolerate as well in some cases. But then, there's also the empty nest syndrome where children are leaving home. And that's probably one of the biggest turning points we see, that children have gone. And what that means is you're sort of staring across the breakfast table at your partner going, okay, well, there's no school run, there's no chauffeur service to the nearest, whatever activity the child is doing that day. What do we have in common? What are we going to talk about? Where are we going to bond? Like, what do we do? And I think it's at that point that either you do the work and you can, definitely make that work, or you realize that actually you don't have much more in common and maybe you're better off separating. And I think that's a big turning point for a lot of people. The other time is retirement as well, 50s, 60s, stepping away from work. Again, different expectations. Some people think, oh, great, we can do loads of stuff together. And then the one partner might think, well, actually, I can go off and do golf, or I can go and do tennis, or I can go and do that other project or write my book. And that doesn't really involve you. So different expectations and changes in midlife can actually really shape the foundation of a relationship. But if you've got a good relationship, that's all positive, and you go on to the next phase, and that can be just as good, if not better.
Mm.
But if there are challenges, or if the relationship isn't healthy, if it's toxic, abusive in any way, we often find that there will be a bit of a breaking point around that sort of time.
Talk to us a little bit about the impact of divorce and relationship breakdowns, particularly at this time of life, and particularly for women.
The interesting thing about the impact is that it has a huge ripple effect on your entire life. And I think a lot of people often think of a divorce as well, their relationship has broken down, that hasn't worked out, but they'll get through that and on they go. But actually what happens is that ripple effect impacts, as you touched on, your mental well-being. So the stress of it, the fear, the overwhelm. There's a lot of really serious negative emotions that are triggered, because when you divide two lifestyles, that obviously puts into jeopardy a lot of the things that you've known. And human beings, we don't like change. We're quite resistant to change. In fact, that's why most of us will stay in a relationship that we know with 100% certainty makes us feel unloved and rejected every day, because we have 100% certainty on just how bad that's going to be. If we step outside of that, we have zero certainty about what that looks like. So we'd rather have 100% certainty than zero, even if it's 100% certainty on just how terrible it is. So that's the interesting dynamic there. And I think when you step outside, or you're catapulted out of a relationship, whichever way it happens, everything changes. There is the complete unknown, and quite often it's scrabbling to kind of overcome those negative emotions, which creates stress, anxiety, sleepless nights, which, as you said, then can go on very well and impact physical health as well. And we often see that. Depression is obviously something that a lot of people go away and get diagnosed with during that period. And I think that can be a little bit dangerous for some people, because what I've seen with clients is they'll come to me and say, well, I'm depressed. I've been diagnosed, I'm depressed, and I'm on antidepressants. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't take antidepressants, but I do want people to be very aware that depression is part of the healing process. There's a 5-stage loss cycle we go through, which because divorce is known as the second most traumatic life experience we go through after death of a loved one, if we follow the same loss cycle as bereavement. And the fourth cycle of that is depression, because you have to grieve the end of that relationship and feel sad and go through those emotions to come out the other side. You can't skip that part. So depression is part of it, but it's a small part of it. And you can fast track through it and you will come out the other side. However, what I see with clients who are diagnosed by the GP, that is kind of an identity they adopt with no finish line. It's like, this is who I am, I'm depressed. My challenge to that is, if you weren't depressed, there probably would be something wrong with you, because it is a very traumatic situation going through any kind of breakup. So it's going to be normal that you're sad, depressed, upset, anxious. They are normal reactions. There's nothing wrong with you for that. It is part of the healing process that we go through. So once people understand that it's finite, it ends, and then you can go on to acceptance, which is the final part. That's when things start to shift and people see the light at the end of the tunnel. But again, with all that anxiety, the stress, the ripple effect is the ability to parent, the ability to even get out of bed in the morning and do even small tasks, let alone going to work. And Harvard Business Journal recently released some really fascinating information showing that a divorce will reduce an employee's productivity in the workplace by up to 40%, 40. So 40% reduction in productivity at work. And not just for the year of the breakup, the year before, as things are starting to fall apart, the year of the breakup, and then the year after. Because remember, you're dealing with maybe moving house, another really stressful event in our lives. Maybe you're out there, you've got different childcare arrangements. Maybe your partner and you used to share the childcare. Now you've got to do a bit more of it, or you haven't got anyone to do the pickups the days you're working a bit late. So again, there's so much impact on adjusting. And that's before people start looking at dating again, which is a right minefield. And most people are probably rightfully so, absolutely terrified of that. So again, there's so many things that happen in life after that. And because love and connections are number one human need, that's something we're desperate for when we lose that from our intimate partner. And the good news is you can get that from lots of other sources, friends, other family members, even a pet, a dog, it can be extremely loving. But I think a lot of people think they've got to jump into another relationship with the first person that shows them a sign of affection with a pulse. And that obviously, again, can lead to breakups and more trauma in that year after the breakup. And so there's a lot of things that happen with a divorce that people probably don't anticipate, but there's a lot below the surface, which is really tough to deal with. But the good news is there are things you can do to make it better. And that's why I exist and my coaches exist, to be honest.
And thank goodness for that. But before we get on to the good stuff, I just want to recap over those stages of grief or
The
loss
loss cycle,
cycle,
the
loss cycle
grief
that you
cycle. Yeah, it's
mentioned.
the same
Yeah,
thing.
could you just go through each one really briefly?
Yeah,
You
so the
talked about
first is
depression and
denial.
acceptance, didn't you? But go on.
Yeah. So the first is denial. And that's, to some people who haven't been through a breakup like this, probably seems a bit weird. So it's when the breakup is happening or has happened, but you deny it. So I found out about my husband having an affair because I've been in the Australia office, separate time to the one I told you about before that. And I come back and I had jet lag, and I thought, right, the best way to get over jet lag is just to go for a run. So I went to get my hairband from my bedside table, opened my bedside table, and in there was a contact lens box. Now, I didn't wear contact lenses. I opened it up going, what is this? Thinking, I don't even know what this is, because I didn't wear contact lenses. I wasn't familiar with contact lens boxes. And inside was a big fat eyelash, false eyelash, winking up at me. And I was like, hang on a second. My side of the bed was the side you kind of have to shimmy down between the curtain and the bed. Yeah, it wasn't like it was like a thoroughfare for the rest of the house. I was like, okay. And in that moment, I knew my entire world had changed. I knew that. However, I did not tell anyone, not my mum, not my husband, not my best friend, nobody for 5 weeks. I kept it to myself because I wasn't ready to talk about it. Talking about it would have made it more real, and my body wasn't ready to help me process that. So I shut it down. And we see this time and time again, clients that find Ann Summers receipts in their husband's pockets don't say anything because they don't want to really know what it's for. Maybe it's a present they're going to get later in time. It's very, very common, and it's a normal human reaction. So that's denial. The second stage is anger, and that's where your energy shifts, you get more animated, and it's more about why is this happening? Why did this go wrong? How could you do this? You're destroying my life, you're damaging the children. It's all those sort of negative emotions. And some people feel anger and even rage. Others, it comes out more as frustration and stress, but that's a real heightened energy sort of resentment phase. Then we come down to what's known as bargaining, where energy sort of dies down a bit. And this is where we don't want to change. So we will try and bend ourselves like a pretzel to stay in a relationship, compromise our morals and values. So maybe, for example, they've cheated and you're like, well, okay, I can maybe forgive and get past that. And some people can, but you're doing this and then, or maybe it's like, I'm going to show up better. Like for me, I was like, okay, well, maybe if I make more effort because I, went home, put my comfies on, no makeup. I thought, okay, I'm going to stop that. I'm going to start making dinner every night and doing all the things that don't come naturally to me, if I'm honest. And I was trying to do all those things, but it's not sustainable. And I wasn't happy, and it still didn't make him happy anyway. So that was the end of that. But bargaining is that stage where we try and cling on to something just because we don't like the change. Then it's the depression we talked about, and then up to acceptance. And that's the place where most clients will feel stuck. They'll be at the point where they go, you know what, I don't want to go back, or I know I can't. I've accepted that. And this is usually where the lawyers have gone. And you go, oh my God, I actually miss my lawyer because they're the only person who used to phone me and email me every day. It's like a friendship, although we don't pay friends, let's be clear. Well, we shouldn't be. So, so that's the key. But people are stuck, and they're stuck because they cannot see what the future holds, and you cannot move towards something you can't see. So most people at this stage, the future looks like one of two things, either a blank canvas or a black hole. And for us as coaches, what we need to do is create as much color and throw that on the blank canvas as we can, or shine as much light into that black hole to illuminate it. Because once you can see and feel what the future might be like, it starts to tip the balance and you get momentum. But acceptance is a great place to be, but you can slide back down to depression unless you get a clear vision of the future and get that momentum to power on through. So they're the 5 stages.
And do you get women particularly who are sort of before they actually do the separating, and they're just really confused about whether to end the relationship or whether to work harder at it. So that's I think that's really common for a lot of women. We should just work harder, we should go to more counseling. When, I suppose it's a really difficult question to answer, but what are the signs that you actually need to just let it go and move on?
Yeah, this is a great question, because getting divorced is not the easy option. Getting divorced is an emotional roller coaster, and it's difficult to navigate. So what I would always say to clients is do the work first. Like, go and try and get help. There's a lot of people out there that specializing in saving marriages and helping you really understand communication tools, your different languages of love, because sometimes you're in a relationship and you are doing the most loving thing, and so are they, but it's different languages you're speaking. So for example, with the languages of love, if yours is maybe words of affection, you're always telling them you love them. They don't tell you they love you back, but there's this acts of service, so mowing the lawn and making you a cup of tea. Even though you're both doing the most loving thing, you may both feel totally unloved and unappreciated in that relationship. So talking to somebody about those kind of tools can really help communication, which can reignite the spark, can get the communication back on track, and that's great. So there might be some easy wins for those type of situations. I would always say, have the conversation in a safe space and say, look, these are the things I love about the relationship and love about you. These are the things that aren't really working for me. Let's put a plan together for 12 weeks. That's 3 months. Let's both commit to 3, 4, maximum of 5 things that we're going to do differently, each of us, so that we bring something to the table and we try and save this marriage. And let's try those things. And you'll know after 3 months whether that's sustainable or not. Does that make you happy? Is it sustainable? Has that changed things in a way that you think, yeah, we can do this? Or is it like, look, we've tried, this is not going anywhere? And then you can go into that knowing that you've got no regrets, because regret is the worst thing. If you haven't tried, you haven't thrown everything at it, you're always going to have that question. So do the work before, get some outside help if you can, like counseling or marriage guidance. Try that exercise. Even if that's alone what you do, having that ability to communicate will give you more clarity. And if you're not sure about whether you should stay or go, it's because you don't have enough clarity right now. Clarity gives you power to make a better informed decision. So do the work, that gives you more clarity. And then at that point, you can make a better informed decision to stay or to move on.
Makes a lot of sense, and I like the sort of step by step of it, and there's a finite kind of time period as well, which is really helpful. Clarity, I think, is one of your 4 keys to surviving divorce. Could you take us through those?
Yeah, clarity is important because I think a lot of us as human beings, we don't want to see what's coming. And if there's something that's worrying us, we kind of ostrich out and we put our head in the sand. We go, especially around money and things like that. It's like, okay, well, I know splitting lifestyles is not going to be good, especially today with the cost of living crisis, 2 mortgages. Yeah, it's just a nightmare doing that. So people are like, especially at the moment, they're saying, I don't want to look at the finance because I know it's going to be bad. The challenge with that is it's going to keep you awake every night because you don't know what you don't know and you have no idea and no control over that. So what we need to do is get the clarity, because clarity gives you power. Once you understand what there is, even if you don't like what you find, you can then create a plan to do something about it. Like, I know I need to make an extra X amount a month to fill that gap, and then I'm going to be fine. Or actually, if I downsize by this amount, there's no change to lifestyle. I can still do what I normally do, just this is what I've downsized on. So you can make those decisions and relieve that pressure. So that's why clarity is really key. Also, focus is another thing. Like, what you focus on, you're going to see more of. Most of us, when we're in a sad, depressed mood, we focus on everything that's wrong with us, the situation, life in general, all our worries, all our woes. And that's easy to do, and it's normal as well. So don't beat yourself up if you are doing that, because it is really normal. However, we've got to train our brains to focus on the positive, because that's how we get ourselves out. And one of the fastest ways to do that is ask ourselves more empowering questions, because our brain asks ourselves questions all the time. Like hundreds and hundreds, thousands of questions are going on in our heads every day. Like, what about this? What about that? What do you think about this? How does that work? We've always got a little voice in our head. If that voice is using what I call hamster wheel questions, which are, what's wrong with me? Why does this always happen to me? Why that person instead of me? Why are they better? Why don't they love me? What could I have done differently to save the marriage? Why did I screw that up? They're hamster wheel questions, because they take you round and round in circles, but never really to a solution that's going to help you in any shape, way, or form. So what we need to do is take ourselves out of disempowering questions, because they generate disempowering answers, and retrain our brain to ask questions that are more like, what can I do right now that's going to make a positive impact on me today? What can I do that's going to cheer me up? Who can I speak to that will help me find a way through this? Like, asking yourself better questions will give you more empowering answers, which will then help you shift your focus to where you really want to be rather than where you don't want to be. So again, training our brain is absolutely key. I think these sort of things are useful tools, and putting them together and stacking them together really makes a positive difference to help us through.
Brilliant. I think there's another 2 keys though, aren't there? So you talked
Yeah, so taking control back is important.
Mhm.
Taking your control back is really about not blaming your ex, not giving your power away. A lot of the time we will blame our ex and give that away. And every time we blame or say it's over there, or they did this and they did that, that's another thing that actually causes us to be disabled and paralyzed and unable to move forward. So it's almost like that moment on Balmoral Beach where I said, screw you, watch this. Like, that was me taking my power back. That was me deciding, okay, like, you may be doing some pretty awful things right now. You may be acting the way you are, but I can't control what you're doing. I can only control what I'm doing. So I'm going to step up and I'm going to move this way, because we all have that choice, either to let this define us as a negative thing for the rest of our lives, or to go, do you know what? I'm going to turn this pain into my superpower, and I'm going to channel everything I'm learning into moving forward, creating the best life for me and my children, or the people I love most in the world. And I'm going to transform myself. And that's my screw you, watch this moment. Because, hey, you can't stop me. You can't break me inside. You can do the things externally. You can say the things and hire the lawyers and throw legal letters at me left, right, and center and terrify and intimidate me. But you cannot break me inside unless I give you that permission. And I will not give my power away to you for that. So I'm going to zip up my Teflon suit and I'm going this way, upwards and forwards, and I'm leaving you in the dust. And that is actually one of the most empowering decisions we can make. And then also, one of the tools is how to dial down negative emotions. And that is actually quite interesting, because most people don't know that we control the remote to our brain. but we do. But most people have no idea how to use it. And that's okay, because we're not given the manual when we're born, like try this, do that. We just learn strategies from our parents and from people around us. Either we do what they did or we do the opposite. But we learn just by absorbing things, like, for example, how to cope with stress. If you speak to 5 different people, there'll be 5 different go-to coping strategies. One might be drinking, one might be isolating, one might be crying, one might be shouting. Yeah, everybody does different things. Why? Not because we all sat down and went, ooh, what's the best way to cope with stress? Oh, I know, I'm going to eat more. Brilliant, I'm going to do that. We don't do that. It's just we learn this as we go unconsciously. And shining a light on unconscious behaviors gives us the ability to really consciously know what we're doing. And then we can take our power back and go, right, I want to choose to do this either differently, or I'm going to do less of it, or I'm going to swap it for something else. And we can choose how we feel, how we react, if we're consciously aware of what we're doing. So again, getting consciously aware is a big step. Then you can do that on your own, or you could do that with a coach, but helping you to sort of look at what you're doing and how that's serving you, and then the ability to shift that. So by changing how you react to things, we can completely change the future direction of how we're feeling and how we go on to feel, and also protecting our mental well-being, and also, as you mentioned earlier, your physical health as well, which can be impacted unless you take control of those emotions and reactions.
Oh, I love it. So many useful tips. What other things are there that can help women through it? I'm thinking particularly of, the isolation and loneliness you might feel having been, well, actually living on your and being on your own for the first time in a long time. What would you suggest for that?
Well, this is one of the things that hit me the hardest, to be honest. Like the isolation and the loneliness was a big thing for me. And I think you find that with breakups, you find that with domestic abuse as well, because isolation is a tactic to isolate you from the people that support you the most, so that you are more vulnerable and easy to control. And also in society today, there's been recent surveys that have shown the biggest issues for society as a whole, forget breakups and divorce, but as a whole, are isolation and loneliness. And one of the things that when I was going through my sort of tool building for getting myself out of this, was to create some tools that I wish I'd had. And so I set up online support groups that are completely free for anyone in the world. We run 32 hours of online Zoom coaching support every month. There's 1 or 2 a day that you can jump on, run by my accredited specialist coaches in breakup, divorce, and domestic abuse. So if you're dealing with anything, any of those tough situations, you can come on, find your tribe. You can find people talking about their stories. You can share some of yours if you want, but you can get uplifting, empowering advice and support. And I think finding your tribe is key. And whether that's you creating your own breakup support team from friends and family that are well-meaning and constructive, because some aren't so, and some are actually also emotionally involved because they feel betrayed or let down or disappointed in the person as well, that just as you are. But I think having a tribe of people that are forward focused and looking at how do we get ourselves out of this and move forward, creating a better life, rather than focusing on the actual situation, is what it's about. So self-care as well was also something I would put into that mix. A lot of us, especially women, find self-care is selfish. And it's not selfish. It's essential for you to be able to make those big decisions we have to make during any separation, because deciding where you're living, or how often you see your kids, or how much money you're going to get, is going to determine the rest of your life for a period of time. So we need to be in the best state. So don't feel bad about going out and pampering yourself, or spending time with people that make yourself feel good, or going for the walk. It's really important you maintain your self-care routine, or put one in if you don't have one. It's easier to put one in to maintain how you feel than to claw out yourself out when you've crashed. So putting in those self-care, and it doesn't have to be going to the gym. For those of you that don't like that, it could be, walking the dog around the block, but it has to be something you're going to commit to doing that gets you outside, changing your physiology, getting you moving, and hopefully around people that care and support you.
Oh, it's brilliant, brilliant advice. I'd like to end, I haven't warned you about this, but I'd love you to tell a story of one of your clients or somebody that you know that's gone through a really tough breakup, but have just recreated their life into something amazing. Do you have a story that you could tell us around that?
Yeah, I've got so many clients that have gone on and done that. I mean, one that sticks in my mind was because she was in her 60s when she came to me, And I actually was running one of my breakup recovery retreats, and I run it in a hotel down near Gatwick in England. It's called Ashdown Park Hotel. It's beautiful, and that's one of the reasons I run it down there, because it's a lovely, energetically beautiful, lovely environment to be in. The staff are super friendly. So she came down, and she was very, very nervous because she'd never traveled on her own. She'd never driven out of her own area, because if they ever went on long trips, her husband would drive, and she'd been married for many years, but he'd run off with somebody from work. And she was absolutely devastated about it, obviously. But it left her with online finance she hadn't done, like online banking, nothing like that. Since they've been married, she used to go to the bank when she was younger. Now that had all changed. It was all online. So she really had very little skills, she felt, that could help her in everyday life. So booking a hotel and driving all the way down there was a big deal for her. Staying away from home was a big deal. Paying for it was a big deal. All of those things have been a lot. And she came down, and she was still living in the marital home, but she knew she had to sell it. But she was really scared about what that would look like. So also she was scared because her husband she was still married to and was living in the same town as her with the new partner, and she was very scared she was going to bump into him in Waitrose. So there were a lot of things that were going on. She was sitting in the car park in Waitrose for 2 hours, just checking that he hadn't gone in and waiting to see if he'd come out. I mean, she was really in a bad state. So she came on the retreat. The retreat kind of fast tracks your recovery. And it was beautiful because she wanted to move, as I said, and we did when we talk about on the retreat, there's a section where we look at what the future's going to look like, as I mentioned earlier. And she said, I've always wanted to have a cottage. I've always wanted to have like a thatch roof and a garden where I could do vegetables, and that would be my fairy tale ending. She goes, that's what I really would love. So we got her to think about it and dream about it, and how could she move towards it. We did some planning for it. Anyway, to cut a long story short, she now lives in a little cottage, and it's called Fairy Tale Cottage. And she's super happy. She has a little vegetable patch. She's not upset about going to Waitrose anymore. And she's got a really happy life. She's now a grandma, and super happy. So, there's a lot of clients that take their power back. And I think there's just a shift. And once you decide to make that shift, it's not a matter of time, it's you deciding when you make that decision. Then it can be a journey, but it's definitely starts to shift, and you can go on and redesign your whole life just the way you want it. It's kind of a golden opportunity to do that. So
I was
how you
just
look at
about
it.
to say that. What an opportunity, if there is no life left in that relationship, what an opportunity to create something that you've always wanted. Because I know women tend to look after everyone else, the children, the partners, everything. And this is an opportunity to do something for yourself for once and in your life. That's something that
Absolutely.
just you want. So there is a lot of positivity on the other side if you can get yourself through at the tricky times. But anything else you want to add, Sarah? Because it's been amazing and so inspiring.
I guess one thing, I guess, is just that, for anyone listening, it's tough. I know it is tough when you're going through this, but the most important, I think, to give you hope and to show you that it's not what happens to you in life that defines you. It's actually what you do about it that makes you the person you are. So you can turn this around. You do have the power, even though you feel powerless and out of control. There are definitely things you can do. And even if you just start with reaching out to a friend or a family member, or coming on our online free support groups and getting ideas there, it doesn't cost any money. There's loads of support. There's lots of things you can do that will help you to turn that around. So you're not alone. And lots of us have been through it and come out the other side, and you definitely can too. So just ask for help, and you can do this.
And I'll put all your website and details underneath in the notes. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been lovely talking to you, and I'm sure a lot of women will be super inspired if they're going through a tough time. So thank you so much for coming on.